Hello, everybody. Welcome. Come on in. We will get started here in less than a minute. Okay, my watch just chimed. It is indeed the top of the hour. So with that, I'll say hello and welcome. My name's Alan Barr. I'm with COEH Northern California. And on behalf of the NIOSH-supported education and research centers throughout the country, we're pleased to bring you another installment, in fact, the final installment of the 2024 ERC Ergonomics webinar series, where we offer free monthly webinars on various topics on human factors and ergonomics. This collaborative effort on behalf of each ERC's continuing education program aspires to provide access to current research supported through NIOSH ERC programs. Thank you for joining us today. If you're logged in via your registration email, you'll receive a link to an evaluation form that will qualify you for a certificate of completion worth 1 continuing education contact hour. As I mentioned, this is the last webinar of the year, and please do check our website for future webinars. That's coeh.berkeley.edu/webinars. You can see what we have planned. For today's webinar, you'll be muted during the presentation as usual. If you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to enter it into the online Q&A, and we'll definitely save some time at the end of the presentation to get your questions answered by Dr. Maikala. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available along with past webinars on the COEH Northern California YouTube channel. I always encourage people to take a moment to like and subscribe to our channel to help us continue to grow it. Today's webinar, as you can see on the screen, the utility of artificial intelligence for risk reduction of musculoskeletal disorders. And our presenter is Dr. Ramahan Maikala, also goes by RAM. And Dr. Maikala joined the National Safety Council USA in November 2021 as a subject matter expert and program technical consultant for the MSD Solutions Lab. Previously, he worked as a senior injury prevention and ergonomics program specialist at Providence Regional Medical Center in Everett, Washington for 7 years. And at Providence, Ram taught and trained hospital staff on safe patient handling and mobility. Before he arrived at Providence in October 2014, he was a research scientist for more than 12 years at the Center for Physical Ergonomics, Liberty Mutual Research Institute for Safety in Massachusetts. He has a doctoral degree in rehab science from the University of Alberta, Edmonton, Canada, a master's in industrial engineering with a special emphasis in ergonomics and safety engineering from West Virginia University, and a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Osmania University in Telangana, India. Excuse my pronunciation. And he's also a fellow of the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society. So there's a lot there. And with that, it's my pleasure to hand the mic over to Dr. Maikala.
Alan, thank you for the introduction. Can you guys hear me?
Sounds great. Yes, sir.
All right. Again, I just want to thank not only COEH, but also I want to thank Professor Nancy Sincox, who kind of created all this wonderful presentation in terms of, getting the logistics done with the COEH from UW. So just want to thank Nancy as well. And some of the content is, which I'm going to talk about, is from this insights report we did, emerging issues. And in June, it almost took a year before we got published in June 2024. It's freely available, and I would like to thank my co-authors, Dr. Paige DeBello and Sarah Isher, who helped me in terms of this particular report. So again, simple agenda. I'm going to talk about the MSD Solutions Lab where I work, and a bit of artificial intelligence. It's not everybody knows about AI, so I'm just going to briefly touch on it. And whether AI can be relevant for prevention of MSDs, let's look at that. But the most important part, or rather large amount of my time, I would like to spend on the insights from the lab-funded projects. And finally, I'm going to touch on ironies, challenges, and opportunities very briefly. because quite a bit of stuff is on the insights report and Q&A in the end. I hope we get a chance to have a Q&A. But you're more, if I can't answer all the questions, you can always reach out to me with my email. All right, so a brief information about our lab where I work. Our goal of the goal of our lab is to create safer outcomes for millions of workers worldwide by collectively reducing risks, MSD risks. Okay, so far more than 200 organizations have already joined us. Almost amount to close to 3 million employees have taken the pledge in terms of reducing these injuries. What is this pledge? Basically, it's an employer-driven pledge. So as an employer, what you're trying to do is taking a pledge to analyze the causes of MSDs and invest in solutions and practices that reduce the risk to workers. And you leverage these innovations and share learnings that improve safety practices. And obviously, you promise to build a culture of safety, where every worker at every level is accountable for the safety and health of work. So again, this pledge is industry-driven or employer-driven. So that means you can set your own goals in terms of risk reduction. Okay. So if you're an employee, if you want to address your MSDs and the risks for MSDs, please join the pledge. So let's get to the AI. And if you don't mind, I'm just going to take my video off. There is some issue with my internet. But so simple AI, again, if you go back to this classic definition of AI, it's the science of making machines do things that would require intelligence if done by men. That was an old one by, the Professor Marvin Minsky from MIT, but, that's been replaced by humans. So again, it's making machines to do things that, would require intelligence if done by humans. IBM talks about using, high-powered computing machines to create systems capable of learning, reasoning, and adapting autonomously to their behaviors or strategies. Again, what AI is doing is replicating as well as augmenting human intelligence. Okay, so when you're talking about the models or the algorithms, what you look at is the accuracy, sensitivity, and specificity. Okay, and the best book I've read or I've seen in terms of the AI is by Dr. Stuart Russell and Dr. Peter Norvig. One of the way they look at is thinking versus acting and rational versus human. So that's the way they define a very nice way of, that's beyond the scope of this presentation, but thinking versus acting and humanly versus rationally. So again, so coming back to AI, we know that, we use these terminologies, so I'm just going to explain this for you. Machine learning. So what machine learning is, it employs advanced algorithms. Sorry, just a minute. Data to replicate the human learning process and detect patterns in larger data sets and enhances precision over time. So when you're talking about machine learning, what we hear quite a bit is supervised and unsupervised algorithms, regression analysis, both linear and logistic, k-means, hypothesis testing, all these come under machine learning. So go back to then, the next comes is deep learning. It employs customizable neural networks that allows machines to handle large amount of data and make precise decisions without human assistance. More data yields better predictions, obviously, thus reducing uncertainty and improving prediction accuracy. Just to let you know, sometimes you see people talking about neural networks first before they talk about deep learning, but so I'm just, please, there is no strict way of looking at it, but the way at least I understood is, I'm not a computing science major, but the way I understood is neural networks is still part of deep learning. Okay, so again, it's neural networks when you're talking is, artificial or simulated neural networks. It's a subfield of DR, and it forms the foundation for all the deep learning algorithms. So why are we calling the neural networks? Because they imitate how our brain works with interconnected units that communicate like biological neurons. Then we have computer vision. As you know, a lot of ergonomics literature or the MSD risk assessments use computer vision. So bottom line is, if AI can enable the computers to think, computer vision allows them to see, observe, and understand. Okay, so neural networks, and they're more capable of replicating the human vision. But what CV does, or the modeling, is that it trains the machines to perform these functions with cameras, data, and algorithms. Okay, and then, at least that's my favorite part, is natural language processing, and which is a mix of AI and computational linguistics. It focuses on enabling computers to comprehend and interpret human language, both written and spoken. It merges with computational linguistics, with statistical modeling, ML, and DL. What it's doing is allowing computers to process text and voice data to grasp the meaning, including the intent, message, and emotions, often in real time. Okay, but as you know, November is a pretty strange month because in 2020, 2019, we were disrupted by pandemic, right? But in 2022, unfortunately, ChatGPT, whether we like it or not, that's part of our life now. So it's an interesting month. In the last few years, things have changed in AI. So what I'm saying is that ChatGPT is nothing but a large language models. So this is all these foundation models is a neural network designed to process a sequence of text tokens. That's input. It takes words, can be numbers or punctuation, and predict the next token in the sequence. If you look at some of the literature, what they say is that in the last few decades, neural networks literally defined AI, but in the last few years, LLMs kind of define neural networks. So everybody's talking about LLMs nowadays. Okay, just to give a simple example, the cost of these foundation models for data collection and model training is very, very expensive. When you're talking about large models like GPT, require massive training data sets, often containing hundreds of billions of tokens, they call tokens, which are expensive to collect. That means computational costs are huge. So what I'm talking in terms of token is that, token is a piece of text that can be as short as a single character or as long as a word. So here on the right side, just the word, if you type ChatGPT is great, it basically is 6 tokens. So why I'm mentioning that is these are developers buy, when they are developing these models, they have to buy the tokens. So they generally buy through the 1,000 tokens per se. So estimating the necessary size for models and data sets remains a huge challenge. So that especially when you're, developing some use cases. So again, LLMs are huge in terms of, and not only the training and also but the cost associated with it. Okay. So coming back to the reality where, our solutions lab, the way when we started this lab is to not only address ergonomics for bigger industries, but also very, very small industries who don't even have any program. So we developed this kind of a house per se. So the goal is to, if a small scale industry wants to develop a program, how do you develop it? So as you know, first we need to identify and address existing MSD hazards and risks, and then prevent the potential new hazards and risks. And of course, not every, as you can't engineer out all the hazards, but you end up with medical management of MSDs too. So I'll give you examples of how AI can be useful in this. Sorry. We are looking at identifying the risk factors for worker injuries. Give a few examples here. We know that, when you're at least part of my job, which in the previous job is that, I need to go, at the Providence hospital system was, we are coding the injury data from the reports. Okay. And then, but here now, you see the classic example of Liberty Mutual Workplace Safety Index. It's a great example of using natural language processing and machine learning algorithms. Because what it is this particular one, which you see on the right side, is just not, it came out with a manual coding of the data. What they did was they look at not only manually looking at all the claims, but also direct coding. And then you have, using the natural language processing, and then, a machine learning to translate these workers' comp claims, and then into the standard BLS categories. So what you see, this is pretty simple, it looks, but there is so much goes beyond. So I just want to thank Dr. Helen Wellman and also Dr. Jesse Jacobs for giving such important information. When I started working for Liberty Mutual, that's in 2011, the first one actually, the Liberty Mutual Safety Index came about, and that's when the Dr. Helen Wellman started this, and it's great work. Again, we always refer, if you look at any literature with respect to injuries, we always cite this particular Liberty Mutual Workplace Safety Index, which comes every year. Okay, so again, these machine learning algorithms can automatically categorize injury narrative streams into distinct causation groups with a high degree of accuracy. Okay, so what you're doing is, by learning from these previously coded narratives, algorithms can code thousands of claims within minutes to hours with high precision. So there's a huge amount of potential using this AI-related techniques. Okay, and just given another example of monitoring and analyzing the data from wearables. Again, you're trying to predict injury risk. This is a study from Dr. Kolzelik lab from Vanderbilt University. What they're looking at is they applied supervised machine learning techniques to subsets of wearable sensor data, both theoretical and actual. And they analyzed how these numbers and the types and the placements of sensors impact algorithm accuracy. Because as you know, you see wearable data everywhere now, so how best we can use that wearable data with respect to AI. So that's what they were trying to do. And so they concluded that specific algorithms can provide a viable, automated, and precise approach for continuously monitoring lumbar movements with wearables during material handling. Again, it's a great study, just an example. Okay, and just going into the diagnosis and treatment, this is where actually, in my view, there's still a lot to be done with respect to MSDs, in the workplace domain. So AI-driven techniques have enhanced medical imaging processes, improving clinical decision-making. There's so much AI literature in the radiology side of it. A lot of publications, almost every other day you see one publication using AI and talking about the radiology and the applications. And so what you're doing is, by integrating patient data, symptoms, lab outcomes, physical exams, and imaging, AI can automate image interpretations and identify optimal imaging procedures. So again, if you look at on the left side, you see how this processing is so easily done. Okay, and these insights could support risk prediction and proactive treatment recommendations tailored to specific MSDs. I see a lot of literature, not literature per se, but a lot of solution providers promote their work. But I have yet to see like a peer-reviewed research with respect to AI-powered tailored medical treatments for workers. Again, there's so much to be done in this area. Okay, and also I want to give an example of return to work. It's a pretty interesting study which was published last year. It's called Smart Work Injury Management System. And what they're looking at is that, they analyzed over 90,000 multi-modality work injury data points using AI. Okay, on the left side, you see that, the beginning stage, rehab stage, and return to work. Very nicely done study. And AI basically outperformed human case managers, reducing the prediction errors by approximately 30%. So yes, there's still to be done. And this particular AI model explained the steps from the injury date to case closure, enhancing, case managers' understanding. Okay, so they developed an interactive dashboard to display the machine learning powered insights for patients and also therapists. And essentially, this study highlights that AI-driven predictive analytics can help rehab professionals, for better recovery outcomes and also improve return to work transitions. Again, there is so much can be done. There is so much being done as of now. Okay. So one of the very excellent papers I've read in the last, I can say in the last decade is this particular paper from University of Waterloo, Dr. Steve Fisher's lab. gave a very good review article. It's on AI in primary prevention of work-related muscular disorders. If you haven't seen it, please have a look. Okay, so I'm going to come to the insights from the lab funded research to solutions projects. For the solutions, our lab gives a lot of money to research projects, and this is the very first year we did, and we selected these 4 huge thanks to advisory council members who reviewed these proposals. We got quite a few proposals, but we narrowed it down to 4. And also, it's not a lot of money in academic sense. This was between $50,000 to $70,000 dollars, but you could see that, I'm going to show you these examples. Even with that less amount of money, the amount of work they have put into, it's just simply amazing. And again, I'm just going to give preliminary findings, because for more findings and for more, the research insights, you should contact these for a particular university. So I'm just going to give you a few examples. So the first one is that, yes, you see these images all the time. So what is the problem in ergonomics problem here? And what are the solutions we can just by looking at it? Can we just put a upload a picture of this online and see whether it spits out the data in terms of not only a solution, so the problem, what are the problems, risk factors with respect to this particular image, and also solutions. Okay, so that's what this particular first study looked into. And so Dr. Main Liu looked into automating ergonomic problem and solution identification by explainable image captioning. Okay, so what they're saying is that, there is a lack of accurate image captioning, with explainability. So that's what they wanted to look at. Okay, so their goal was to identify the problem and also ergonomic solution given a workplace image with deep learning techniques. Okay, and the second goal was to develop an LLM-based caption augmentation technique to significantly accelerate the annotation process. Okay, so they used ChatGPT to augment the human annotated captions for containing richer semantic information. So that was their goal. So what they did was they proposed 3 methods for explainability. And so those techniques are visualize attention and cohesiveness, and also visualize pose awareness and embedding knowledge. So there are the 3 techniques they used. Okay, so if you look at the attention mechanism, right, that is just a way of focusing on only a smaller part of the complete input, while ignoring the rest. So if you're looking at looking at the attention, okay, there is a problem is that, the worker is bending forward to tie the rebars. So what's the solution? Maybe you can use a rebar tying tool with an extension handle. Okay, and then they use that pose awareness technique, and then, finally embedding knowledge. What is embedding knowledge means, in the sense that, so basically you're incorporating prior information or a domain expertise, in the form of rules or equations or structured relationships into this particular machine learning model. Okay, what you're doing is, what they're trying to do is to effectively make better predictions, when you have limited amount of data. So how did they do it? So they collected huge amount of data through real workplace images and grouped them into, to ergonomics risk factors. But for that, they close to 10,000 images and also 10,000 captions they got. But they used the trained ergonomists from Velocity HS for each problem with the support of the augmentation technique. And then they evaluated the existing image captioning models. They used bootstrapping language image pre-training model as the backbone and the potential for self-explainability, and used bilingual evaluation under study. It's a metric for automatically evaluating machine translated text. So basically, they are looking at the range between 0 to 1 to see the similarity between the AI generated versus human generated captions. Okay. And again, those results were evaluated by ergonomists to assess if that, the AI versus, the actual human generated ones are accurate enough or not. Just an example you're looking at the results of the visualizing attention and cohesiveness model. If you look at, the red ones in that, that's pretty impressive. The results were based on 222 testing images. It's better, it's a great model in terms of, capturing the right information. All right. So the next, we talk about pose estimation, right? A lot of people are nowadays talking about markerless, workers versus marker-based, because, marker-based is a huge, undertaking. Workers versus what you see is 2D pose estimation. A lot of, you can take a smart camera and get these together, or a 3D pose estimation, for the motion capture. And now we have this 3D pose estimation from multi-camera motion capture. So how best we can use, the markerless motion capture to assess the biomechanical exposure during material handling tasks. This is from Dr. Anu Ojalade. He's at the University at Buffalo. He was Dr. Mari Nussbaum's student. So this project was carried when he was at Virginia Tech. So the first goal of Anu was a markerless. How can a markerless motion capture system integrated with machine learning algorithms be evaluated for its ability to continuously classify diverse tasks during a complex simulated job? What they're doing is they're continuously classifying. It's not just one task they're looking at, but they wanted to see a total, where a person can load, unload, push, pull, carry, all those tasks, okay? And the second goal was to investigate the feasibility of the predicting 3D dynamic hand forces. They're using kinematics from the markerless and also insole pressure systems coupled with, again, machine learning algorithms. Sorry, I just have some sickness going on. The third goal is to estimate the biomechanical demands, in terms of the compression and shear forces by comparing outcomes from a full body musculoskeletal model using motionless capture data with those obtained using gold standard inputs. Okay, so there are 5 phases in terms of collecting the data and capturing and processing. So you have the data collection phase, and you have the data processing and future extractions from that. And then they used a task, they classified the tasks using machine learning algorithms. And then they also estimated, as the dynamic forces, the hand forces, using machine learning algorithms. And then in the phase 5, they estimated biomechanical demands. So this is the task they were looking at on the left side, pushing, cart pushing, overhead lifting, pushing and pulling, asymmetric lifting. So these are the continuous tasks. So again, they are still working on this data. All of these are, investigators have been for completing their data analysis, but these are all just a snapshot of what their findings are so far. So they using kinematic data from motionless capture and machine learning algorithms led to a satisfactory performance in classifying the diverse manual material task and the task conditions. Okay, the precision when you're classifying the tasks and the task conditions was about 85 to 97%. Pretty good, great model. And the classification performance did vary depending on the feature sets and also specific manual material handling tasks. And the very interesting thing Anu was talking about is that there was a sex-specific differences were observed, indicating that yes, gender may impact the effectiveness of machine learning algorithms. Like it seems based on my conversation with Anu is that men have a very lifting style is more of a freestyle versus the women, they're looking at the squat lifting. So there is a postural differences in terms of the task performance. So that could be identified by machine learning algorithms. So a few more results. Then their machine algorithm. The algorithm showed promise in estimating the hand forces in horizontal, lateral, and vertical directions. And interestingly, the performance differed again between the tasks and the input feature sets from the algorithms and the low mass conditions. This is an example between the 6 kilograms versus 9 kilograms. So you see the difference. WB is basically whole body kinematics. This is the intersole pressure and this is the combination of it. Again, you see a bit of differences between those approaches. And interestingly, it seems tasks involving pushing, pulling had the largest root mean squares when predicting the hand forces in the horizontal and vertical directions. And in terms of the hand forces, again, if you're using a combination of markerless and the predicting hand forces led to a smaller peak compression forces, which you see here on the graph. Okay, so and also using the data from MMC and the install pressure measurements led to a smaller root mean squares compared to using data from only install pressure systems. Okay, again, they saw a performance differs between males and females. Again, pretty interesting study. As I said, there's sex differences as well and there is also differences between markerless versus others in combination. So great study. Again, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach Anu. All right, so we know that people have talked about that nowadays we take images and we analyze the risk factors. 2D, you see this way, but unfortunately 2D doesn't give a clear picture. So that's why we go for 3D view as well, right? So can we use AI-based three-dimensional motion capture technology to predict shoulder injury risk? Okay, and then can we implement AI-based 3D motion capture technology to provide accurate, repeatable, and objective assessments? That's the goal of the next project from Jason Joy. Okay. And what Jason is looking at is trying to address shoulder fatigue and injury risk. They are developing a predictive model and AI-based application for ergonomics assessment. So the first goal was, excuse me, to develop a model for mapping arm posture to muscle activation. And the second goal was to validate that AI-based 3D motion capture and the model in the lab and workplace settings. So of course, again, great study because, they're not only looking at the lab, but also they took that to workplace settings as well. So the third goal is to obviously improve the accuracy of this particular app, called Shoulder Injury Risk Assessment app, right? So how did they do it? Again, it's a huge undertaking, and shoulder is one of the toughest, as you know, in terms of body part to analyze. So they have, acquired the video from, typical images, and then, they pre-processed it, and they went into 3D AI-based motion capture because they wanted to generate a 3D pose, right? And then, they used Python programming to create skeleton overlay videos. And then, sorry. So you have, 3D joint angles they calculated, and then that has spread into shoulder injury risk assessment calculations. The unique thing is that, they're also looking at using this, creating, assisting the ASTM standard with respect to, and also TLVs. So huge undertaking with respect to this study. And my slide is not moving. So 1 minute. Yeah, got it. Okay. So again, as I said, when we started this AI, when we're talking about accuracy, validation, all these things come in play. So they compared the AI-based motion capture to the lab motion capture. So you have this 12 camera that's, in the lab versus these are the cameras. This is smart cameras. Okay. You're just taking a picture from your cell phone. One is on the northwest direction and also on the west. And they look at, the accuracy of this particular with respect to right shoulder elevation. Okay. And in terms of validation, they compared this particular app fatigue prediction to their EMG data. Again, some of this work is already published in just this month, December, in the ASSC journal, Professional Safety. Very nicely done, very easy to understand. So there's a lot of work is being done, but this, if you really want to have a quick look of what Jason and his team has done, please look into this paper. All right. So now, we are talking about angles and, from different ways to look at, right? So you have anytime, we are lifting or anytime you're doing ergonomics analysis, which angle is important, which side is important. So how does the viewing angle impact the computer vision accuracy? And is there an optimal angle for achieving the best results? Okay. And to what extent does this motion speed, contribute to image blurring? And how does this affect the accuracy of computer vision outputs? And not only that, how do results vary across different computer vision methodologies? And what factors drive these differences? That's that's a it's very needed right now because we have so many computer vision models people use, the apps. And so which one is, good, which one is not good per se, but which is what kind of modeling goes into these particular assessments to give these optimal angles. Okay. So that's what Dr. Steve Fisher's lab has done to generate evidence-based guidance for implementing computer vision-based technologies for MSD risk assessment. Okay, you might have seen this. It's a great report. If you haven't seen, please, this is from they collaborated with CDC NIOSH. But what now Steve is going to do is that, based on this data and also what they're doing in addition to this particular lab project, they are trying to come out with the guidelines, computer vision-based posture assessment. This is, again, great work. So I'm just going to give, again, a few example, or I should say a few insights of what they have been doing in the lab. So you have 6 tasks. What they're doing, you have 8, cameras, 2D cameras. And if you look at, right, if you're looking at from the sagittal or the front plane to there, look at the way, each camera captures the images, right? Then they used 4 softwares or 4 apps, which, one is InSeer, Tumike, and 3Motion AI, and also EWE Post Checker. Those are the ones which are being used nowadays in the industry. Of course, there are others too. So what they did was they used single camera pose estimation models and they compared with the multi-camera model from Thea Markerless. Okay. So here, so again, the question is direction of capture. Does it influence? What's the best way to do it? So they looked at different, again, there are all the camera angles they were looking at for different shoulder and also trunk inclination. Okay. And the task you see on the video is pretty, so it's a simple task, but how does, different angles play a role? Excuse me. And so they look at the ground truth reference versus, the single camera pose estimated data across all the computer vision based risk assessment models. Okay. So this is an example for fast work. They have done for both of fast and slow paced tasks. Okay. This is an example of palletizing. Sorry. So again, you see a bit of differences in terms of, camera angles and also the task and also the posture, okay, for the body part. So, and looking at the pace now, okay, influence of pace. You have, again, you have a right shoulder elevation and also you have a trunk inclination in terms of the sagittal lifting, and you have both the difference between fast movements and slow movements. What they say is that they were averaged across all computer vision based risk assessment models for each camera view. And they said that, majority of these tasks in the workplace can be effectively captured and analyzed using single camera pose estimation models. That's a good news. A lot of people just use our smart camera just to look at, take the picture and do the risk assessments. So, however, more ballistic movements may still cause image blurring, potentially impacting accuracy of these pose estimation models. Okay. So that's very good to know, in terms of how we take care of the, when we use these models, we need to be mindful of, fast versus slow and also different, angles, right? And also, as I said, they compared 4 computer vision models which are available in the market. And according to them, there is a differences exist in how each single camera computer vision based pose estimation company identifies their key points in a 2D video to build and their 3D pose estimation models. You have to be mindful of that. And so actually in the recent emails, I think there was a question of which one is good, in terms of the Human Factors Ergonomic Society. We have the lister serve. There was a question about which are good, which are not good. This can be a good start. I think in a year or so, Dr. Steve Fisher's lab is going to come out with this particular insights in terms of the recommendations. So maybe we should look into that because this is going to be a great resource. Again, coming back to each company employs a distinct methods and criteria to calculate their trunk inclination and shoulder elevation angles. So what's going to happen is it leads to a variety of angular outcomes, and they mentioned that, they followed ISB standards for computing ground truth joint angular outputs from the Thea marker less, that best match those angular outputs from these. So yes, there is a difference in root mean square. And so their final, I should say their final statement is that, we are not comparing the same. There is some differences in terms of, if you're looking at, angular outputs. All right. So these are the studies. Again, great work done by these grants. Again, I want to thank advisory council members of our MSD Solutions Lab and also the judges who really, we had limited money, but great projects. So let's talk about the ironies and challenges and opportunities. Okay, I'm just gonna give you, if you remember this classic paper on ironies of automation, which was in 1980s by Lisa Ann Bainbridge. So it was published in Automatica, talked about ironies of automation. Okay, that was a great paper. In the similar lines, Dr. Micah Hensley talked about ironies of AI, because that's what is happening nowadays, right? We look at AI and we think that's, wow, this is a great tool, but there are so many issues with it. So let's see what she talks about in terms of ironies. What she says is AI is still not that intelligent. So despite its advancements, like ChatGPT makes human language, but it lacks true understanding, struggling with context, causation, biases, and creativity. I'm sure majority of you experienced, that what you see, what you get from ChatGPT might not be that accurate. The more intelligent and adaptive the AI, the less people understand it. So as AI systems grow in complexity and evolve, their opaque nature makes it harder for users to build accurate mental models, predict behaviors, or adapt effectively. And the more capable the AI, the poorer people's ability to compensate for its shortcomings. The biggest, unfortunately, this is the most important one, is that, it reduces users' situational awareness. You end up over-reliance. Again, this is a classics, which I think Lisa Ann Bainbridge talked about, Lisa Ann Bainbridge in 1980s when she was talking about automation. Still, we rely over-reliance on automation. Same thing here also, over-reliance on AI. And then what happens is you undermine the ability to recognize and address its limitations. Okay. And the more intelligent the AI, the harder it is to discern its limitations and bias. Okay. Again, there is so much we talked about, there is so much research is coming out in terms of the gender, race, and, all those biases in terms of, when it gives the information. So we don't know what goes into the model, right? AI models, a lot of people, a lot of, people who develop these, they don't tell, what goes into it. It's like there was a time we used to say for computers, garbage in, garbage out. But for AI, it's more of a black box, So the more natural the AI communication, the harder it is to assess its trustworthiness. Okay, what Maikala says is that human-like responses from AI foster overconfidence by obscuring cues about accuracy and reliability, making it challenge for users to judge its outputs critically. We talk about this fabrication or hallucinations, so basically it tells clearly that, what you see from LLMs and others, this might not be accurate, So we need to have a human in the loop, okay? So again, because of time, I just wanted to just focus on a few things so that at least we'll have some questions. So this one we talked about at great length in the report, in Insights report we did. So, but I'm just going to talk about, just a few things because AI manufacturers and the developers, they do not reveal their proprietary models in our logistics. So what happens is we don't know the validation of these models unless they are open about it. Okay, that's a huge, one of the challenges in terms of technology. This one, worker privacy, is huge, as you know. It's a huge issue in the workplace research nowadays because, at the end of the day, you have to protect the worker's privacy. Take the consent, the confidentiality and the data security are important, but not only for the healthcare provider, employer, but also employee as well. So. And in terms of the policy and regulation, the blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights is a great framework. We talked about this, but there's so much came out. As I said, we published this in June 2024, but there is so much is being as we speak or we talk, sit here. There's so much being done in the policy and regulation aspects of it. So again, you're looking at more efforts on AI-related policies and procedures to address these ethical and legal and societal dilemmas. Okay, so just a few examples here. I'm sure some of you know, especially if you're in California, talk about Safe and Secure Innovation for Frontier AI Models Act. It's basically, it's called SB 1047. It's a 2024 California bill. It aims to mitigate catastrophic AI risks from models beyond current capabilities. Okay, so because it applies to, unfortunately, it applies to these models which are like, if the training cost is greater than 100 million, okay, if the computing power is such a high numbers, then only unfortunately it applies to them though. But and also it applies to all AI companies operating in California, regardless of location. But it's a good start, at least, yes, it should apply to every model, but they have some, there's still a lot of work to be done. But the key provisions in terms of this particular act is that there is a whistleblower protection, and also they are emphasizing that developers must conduct risk assessments before releasing these models, overseen by the Government Operations Agency. And it establishes Cal Compute, a public cloud computing cluster of the University of California for startups, researchers, and community groups. Again, this is a very good act in terms of the policies and regulations. And also, I'm sure if you're following the National Institute of Standards Technology, they are looking at ARIA. It's called, assessing the risks and impacts of AI. The 0.1 will focus on the risks and impacts associated with large language models. And so a lot being done in this space. So as you know, because of there's so many things there, we need to have guardrails in terms of the AI. So, and then, again, if you're looking at AI, right, being ergonomics or human factors professionals, and I think we should look into the systems thinking perspective. Yes, you can just look at the one worker or one task, but can we have a system thinking approach in terms of identifying the risk across the whole work systems, okay, instead of comparing only to the worker and worker-related factors. And AI-powered models, yes, they can efficiently process this complex work data, and they're making connections and identifying patterns through predictive insights and data-driven strategies. For example, yes, AI might reveal that, hey, the placement of that particular tool in the assembly line is impacting workers' reach. But instead of just looking at that, can we look at the whole workflow of that process, so that everything can be ironed out? Okay. And also integrating AI technologies with a system thinking approach enhances the identification, understanding, and management of ergonomic risks. Okay. And finally, what I'm trying to say is that, AI-powered algorithms play a crucial role in identifying, modeling, and mitigating risks by risk factor identification, variable monitoring, work environments assessments, and real-time visual risk assessment and hazard alerts. That's kind of we summarized in our insights report. And when implementing AI for musculoskeletal disorder risk reduction, it is essential to ensure that all these systems are developed, deployed, and used responsibly. More importantly, the models used in the workplace should be explainable. Again, nowadays you see responsible AI, explainable AI. This is very, very, hot topic right now. That means that, decisions made by AI systems, they should be transparent and understandable to not only employees, but also employers. Okay. That's mine. And just if you guys are looking for, grant money, we have opened this research to solutions grants and also pilot grants. Those are the QR codes. And if you have time, we are also, we have a future of EHS where the latest and brightest information in the EHS world. It's coming, it's going to be in February in St. Louis, Missouri. And our own NSC Safety Congress, which is like 15,000, 20,000 people attend this, is in September. So these are the ones. Sorry for the sales pitch here. And I just want to thank our team here, Paige, Katie, and Marley, Riley, and that's me. So again, I just want to thank you all for your time. I know this is like a week before the holidays. So thanks for sticking around. And Alan, I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Ram. That's a very excellent presentation. We really appreciate it. I will ask if this QR code is the same as the one on slide 2 or 3. I did get a request to go back to the QR code, but perhaps this is simply a representation.
Almost the same.
Oh, very good. Okay, so to the person that asked, there you go. There's your QR code. Please take a minute to scan that. And for the other person who is asking about a certificate, yes, you will be mailed a certificate after you complete an evaluation, and that link will be sent out to you. Okay, so not a lot of questions today, which is a little bit of a surprise given we had a couple of hundred attendees, but theirs is a great one. I really like. Richard asks, and you really touched on this, but maybe you could speak a little bit more about it. If AI shows one way of working that's more efficient than the way that AI indicates, more efficient, and then another way that's safer, what's to stop employers from sort of directing people into the efficiency pathway over and above the safe pathway?
My goodness, that's
Isn't that a great one?
That's a tough question, Richard. Yes, I mean, end of the day, what are the policies at your workplace? I go for that rather than, yes, it's safer for the worker, but it can be, detrimental. But look at our policies and procedures at your work, not only in terms of the safe practices, but also in terms of the employee well-being. So, I mean, that's the simplistic way to look at your question. I hope I answered your question, Richard.
Great. And the first was more of a comment, and that was about AI building relationships with the frontline workers to create a sense of buy-in. And I guess more of a cautionary statement, time getting to know and understand frontline workers as individuals from a person-centered approach can never be rushed or replaced. And I think we all agree.
I agree 100%. I think there is quite a few studies which are looking at in terms of getting a buy-in from the frontline or the worker who's being watched, or whatever the right word is. But I think there's some there are a few, I think, Jesse Jacobs from Liberty Mutual looked at the employee perception and in terms of the variables and all. That's a good paper to look into as well. But again, yes, we need to get a buy-in from the employee. It's that, it's not, we are not policing it. We are trying to make your work, work better, work safer. So that's how we should look into, so as long as we get that buy-in, that comfort, I think that will be a good, and we are making sure that that data is not being used for something else. So we need to have that kind of a relationship before we, pilot any solution.
Okay, one more question just along those lines, and from anonymous says, since industry has reduced efforts for ethics surrounding AI, I don't know if it's true or not. What ethics do you personally recommend in using and applying AI for industry?
I think AI ethics is a huge field right now. So they are definitely looking into in terms of that particular. I'm not a, computing science major guy or a AI expert, but AI in ethics is a huge topic right now. And that's why I kind of put those, the act from California and also the ones in Europe, they're all looking into ethics. So, I mean, that is important, so.
Great.
But there is some literature at each government level. So.
Okay, have you come across any AI ergonomic systems that reliably capture precision-related tasks or tasks revolving around repetition and intensive hand exertions?
I think there are some who are talking about it. I don't think I can mention that, but how, again, it goes back to Steve Fisher's study, Dr. Steve Fisher's study from Waterloo, that, are they, oranges versus apples, or are they really capturing that information? So yeah, it's,
Okay.
still, I think it's still, I mean, there might be, but I haven't seen I mean, I should say I haven't seen the very good ones in terms of the reliability or validity ones. So.
Okay. Groav asks, would multimodal AI models increase the accuracy of prediction of MSD risks?
My goodness, Dr. Gaurav Nanda from Purdue. That's a tough question. Yes, I think so. I think that will help in terms of the accuracy prediction. But again, as long as there's a transparency, in terms of what goes into that, So that's, again, Gaurav, you might be the better person to answer that than I'm. But that's a great question. But again, transparency is very important in the AI. If you look at the literature now, there is a lot of people are talking about, that's the reason I said a lot of solution providers are giving that, yes, my system can do and all, but we really don't know. There is one classic paper which we cited in the report about racial bias. So as long as you know what goes into the system, that will help to at least, mitigate some of the issues which we address here.
Okay, great. And one more question from Gaurav, and that is, what kind of approaches are being used to preserve worker privacy and also to gain workers' trust that they're not being tracked? I think this question is super poignant based on the apparent reliance on computer vision, so thereby just automatically identifying facial features and personal information in that regard.
Yeah, again, the guardrails, I think the responsible AI, all these come into picture. So again, that's a great question, but again, getting a buy-in from the worker is the most important thing, because in a way, yes, end of the day, we need to tell them that, this is not to police you. This is to make your work better and safer. So that's how I look at it, in terms of, it's like any other, even simple variable, if you're trying to, even in going back to ergonomics education, we are talking about, hey, you know what, you lift this way versus you lift that way. Explain to them what is the implications of it. What's, biomechanics, what's the spinal load on it. Just give some numbers to make them aware that, hey, you're lifting 50 pounds versus 35 pounds. So education definitely is a key.
Got you. I've got time just for one more. There are several questions remaining. If you'd like to ask them later, please
Yes, I
feel
mean,
free to email.
yes, please.
Ram has offered his email on the slide deck, and those are available. You may request those through COEH. Actually, I don't have time for any more questions, and I apologize. Now you guys asked me some great questions, or asked Ram some great questions at the last minute. I have to take this minute to sort of close things out. So Ram, I'll say thank you so much. That was an excellent presentation. You can learn more and register for our upcoming events at coh.berkeley.edu. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can see previous webinars. As a reminder, if you logged in today with your registration email, you will get a link with an evaluation form that qualifies you for Certificate of Completion Worth 1 CE Contact Hour. Okay, if you have any questions for us over here at COEH Northern California, you can drop us a line at coehce@berkeley.edu. That's coehce@berkeley.edu. I want to say thank you for everyone who attended today. I'm wishing you happy holidays and a fantastic new year. Ram, thank you, bud. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Evan. Thanks for your time, and thanks everyone for sticking around. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody.